welcome you. We're so happy that you're here with us today. We meant to meet sooner, but we've been extremely busy. Like I said, we'll be actually telling you a little bit about that today.
Good afternoon.
There we go. Who was that? Hello?
Good afternoon. This is CJ. How's everyone doing today?
CJ, we're all doing great. Glad you could join us.
Thank you so much for the invite. Good to see everybody again.
Yes, and I've allowed a little time after for us to just, do a little more chatting. We love to hear what you're doing, what you've been involved with. Today, we're going to actually, Alina's going to give you kind of a summary of some things that we've been involved with which have been exciting, as well as some upcoming events. And then we have Brian Casson from the Kansas Department of Transportation, who will be sharing some of the work they'll be doing. We got to meet Brian in Omaha when we had our first regional event. Again, Alina will tell you about that. And then we will, I've already got a couple dates tentatively scheduled just to keep us on track. We've kind of figured out how we've done a lot of traveling, but we're getting to be pros at it, aren't we, Alina? It's like have the bag packed ready to go.
Yep.
So if we have these on the calendar, we actually have a couple that want to present and speak to the group. So that's great. We'll also update you on any information. We need to do just a really good FAA update, some of the, what's happening within that could affect your work. So we'll do that. And that'll be October. Right now we're looking at the 11th, and then December, early December. And I have those dates at the end of the presentation.
Awesome, wonderful. I hope that I can participate in some upcoming events for 2023 for sure.
Absolutely. And we will definitely get into it. And Diana, I did see that Brian, I saw his little square.
Oh, good.
So we are
Awesome.
good to go.
Welcome, Brian. All right. So like I said, we have been busy. It's been very exciting. We just came back, Alina and I did, from Minneapolis. We were there with others from the FAA. Got pictures here. They set up this huge drone cage at, it was called Experience STEAM, which was a fabulous STEM event, added to that for arts. And so we were there back in, I guess it was June. We were at a drone camp in Stafford, Virginia. That was really nice. It kind of tied in with a trip through North Carolina to look at a facility for a regional event that's coming up. And also in July, Abby Smith, she is our new Deputy Director of the UAS Integration Office. She actually, and I got to go to Virginia Tech, the wing, and see the wing nest. And this is where they're doing deliveries. They're actually, I even downloaded the app to my phone, which was super cool. And Abby placed an order. We got to see it come in and land. It was really great, but the focus was, again, a drone camp. And it was also, the students that were targeted were from like underserved areas of their community. But the pictures here kind of going around besides us up against the drone cage there. Alina, she built that, her drone. That's awesome. We had our drone stickers, so we added that. She had added those to them as well. But we had the Minneapolis FSDO, which is Flight Standard District Office. We had two of their program managers for the fast safety team, which I know some of you in today's meeting are part of that. And then Vern, and I cannot recall Vern's last name, but he's actually holds an office within AUVSI. And so we just had a super great week. The other STEM events, we got to engage with students. The football field at the top was that Stafford, Virginia event. It was at the high school there. They used the NIST training, which are the big gallon, like 10-gallon buckets, so that the students could actually fly and go and take a look. At Virginia Tech, they had to build a drone. Kits were sent to Virginia Tech. They were ordered, sent there, and then the kids built them. And then they also had to do a presentation, which is why that poster board was there. But that is a magnificent facility if you're ever over that way. There were Hydra FPV racers that really caught the attention of the crowd walking by in Minneapolis. And they actually let them do what we call ride-along. So they put the goggles on the general public that was there. They could watch from that bird's eye view, which to me was a little nauseating, but you could actually watch that. And then we had two telos, the fella on the, I guess he's on the very right that says Northland. Those of you that know Zach Nicklin from Northland Community and Technical College, this was one of his students that just graduated, and he was working with all the kids and showing them how to operate a drone. So it was really super cool. So I'm not going to say a whole lot more. I'm going to pass it off to Alina to share with you some things since we last met that occurred, and also some events coming up. So Alina, just say next slide and I will advance for you.
Will do. And I do want to say about the Experience STEAM event, that was such a delightful event. We were at the Mall of America, and there were people passing us and just stopping to look, what is this? And then they would want to fly. So we were helping people fly their drones fly drones in general for the first time, including, I will say, this was just so heartwarming. One of the grandmas, like a little old lady, decided she wanted to fly the drone with her grandkids, and she was great at it. So one thing that we kept saying throughout all of this was, drones are really for kids of all ages. And I think that is such a wonderful, wonderful way to look at it.
Alina, let me interrupt because I didn't say this about that event. Shame on me. Not only are we being hosted and recorded by the National Center for Autonomous Technologies, NCAT, they also hosted this great event that we were at in Minneapolis, along with other partners. So I just wanted to say that quickly.
Yes, absolutely. NCAT was a huge, I think this was their idea, and it was a great event. Really a lot of fun. Okay, let me talk to this slide a little bit before we get too sidetracked. So we've been really, really busy. If you haven't heard from us, this is why. In addition to the STEM events that we've been doing, we are also going to a lot of conferences, and we've been hosting a lot of UAS events. Of course, we were at AUVSI's Exponential. We met some of you there. We also had our first droning on, which I'll get into in a little bit, and the Faa Drone Symposium. So Diana, next slide, please. All right, Exponential. So in Orlando, Florida, we had a booth, and it was so busy. We had to call for backup. Thankfully, there were plenty of FAA folks who were milling around. They had been doing some speaking events, and so they were able to come in and help us out. But the number one comment that we got from attendees was that the booth staff really changed their image of the FAA. They now see us as approachable and helpful, which is exactly what we want. We got a lot of questions, of course, about waivers, exemptions, and type certification. We were, like I said, really fortunate that there were a lot of FAA folks at Exponential that we could call on for their help. Exponential this year did coincide with the FAA's Drone Symposium, which was also a really great success. And next slide, please, Diana. Actually, sorry, one second. About the Drone Symposium, what happened at AUVSI was really focused on industry and what's going on right now. There are actually really great free virtual events for recreational flyers, students, and teachers that are happening online. They're going through the whole summer. It's called Flying for Fun. They are great little events, and I am actually going to be hosting a panel in a couple of weeks. So if you're interested in that, we can get you a little bit more information. All right, so now this slide. We did get to meet so many of you when we were in Florida, and I'm very, very thankful for that. And hopefully we'll be meeting more of you soon. We had our own little social. As you can see, we took up a lot of this restaurant here, and we had a really, really wonderful time. Next slide, please. All right, so this is some of our bigger news. We are going out to all 9 of the FAA regions. As you all know, the FAA has split up the country into 9 separate regions. Each one has their own regional administrator, their own office that works on aviation within that region. So our first region that we went to was the Central region. So we started in the middle and we're going to be spreading out. This was hosted by the University of Nebraska in Omaha. We were so thrilled to have their support and to have UNOS hosting this event. Couldn't have been a better place. Excuse me. On Thursday, our audience was students. On Friday, our audience was public safety, local, state, and tribal governments. And then on Saturday, we had sort of a free-for-all. It was for the general public where we had demos. We had some great FPV racers there, and we had a great time. Omaha is a very cool city. If you haven't visited before, I really, really liked it. Next slide, please. All right, this was one of the things that we did in Omaha. Felt like we were on a college campus, so let's do the college thing. So we use sidewalk chalk to actually direct people from the parking lot to the building that they were supposed to go. Next slide, please. All right, we made a lot of friends, including friends from the Lincoln, Nebraska FSDO. We've got a couple of folks here. Chris Chambers, he's the one in red. Owen Grimm, he's to the other side of Diana, who you can see there. And Marlon Bessner. We also met Mark Gaffney and a number of folks from the Nebraska State Police who were really wonderful and have a really, really great drone program. So we are, of course, always trying to recruit drone pros, handed out flyers with steps to sign up and all sorts of wonderful stuff like that. Next slide, please. Friday. So Friday was our public safety and recreational, not recreational, I'm sorry, public safety, local, state, and tribal governments. We had Joe Miniacci from the Central region. He's the administrator. He gave some opening comments. We also had a number of tables set up as like booths on which we had local police department talking about their program, Kansas State University, which is a UAS CTI school, as well as Joan Karaoke from the University of Dubuque. Brian Casson, who is here with us today, he actually presented that day as well with Spencer from Kansas State University. So it was a really, really great day full of excellent speakers. There was a lot that everybody learned. Next slide, please. So two last things here. One is Drone Safety Day was this year. It was June 18th, which was a Saturday, and it was a pretty good success. We had over 40 events hosted, and NCAT was wonderful and was able to host the website for Drone Safety Day this year. Drone Safety Day is a crowdsourced drone safety campaign So we put it on in collaboration, of course, with industry, community leaders, and community members to help us share the drone message, because we don't have the reach that we know some of these people do. So it's really, really great to be able to have their help. Again, 13 different states we had events in, including 2 territories, Guam and Puerto Rico. And there were events in 3 different countries, which is really wonderful. So the US, there was an event in Nigeria as well as Chile. So excellent event. Next slide, please. So this was our slogan for Drone Safety Day, and this is going to be evergreen. So you're going to see this pop up over and over and over again. Fly right. And we came up with this slogan as something for people who are just starting to get into drones, and for more experienced drone flyers as well. It's just a little reminder: register your drone, interact with others, gain knowledge, have a safety plan, trust and train. And the trust, of course, is taking the trust, which is the recreational UAS safety test. Next slide, please. All right, droning on. As I mentioned, we're going to all 9 of the regions. So our next one is going to be in New England. We are going to be at the University of Maine at Augusta. And the event itself is going to be at the Brunswick Aviation Campus. So this is going to be in Brunswick, Maine. We are going to be there September 29th, 30th, and October 1st. So again, this is going to be a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Next slide, please. Oh boy, we've got a bunch coming up too. So we've got the New England region. We are going to have the Great Lakes region. And that date actually just changed today. It's going to be the 13th through the 15th of October. So still in October, just the next weekend instead. Southern region, we are going to be there for the Thursday and Friday, October 20th through the 21st. And then we are going to be doing Eastern region in April in New Jersey. So very excited about that. Like I said, we've got all 9 regions to do. We're still filling out the schedule. And if this is something that you're interested in, please let us know. We are always looking for speakers and presenters. And if you're with a university, we'd love for you to host. The vision for droning on regional editions is that this is not going to be a one-time event. This is going to be an annual event based on each region, what they want to do and how they want to move forward. So if we don't come to your school this year, maybe it could be next year. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Diana. Oh, I could do this very, like newscaster.
That's exactly. I was going to say, you're like a TV personality, Alina. She really is amazing and so much fun to travel with. We had a good time last week.
Oh, Diana, before we move forward, may I respond to a question that was in the chat? Or we can respond to them afterwards. I got a question. Are there any recordings from Omaha? And the answer to that is no. We are doing these as live events. We want to bring people together in person. That being said, we are thinking about actually recording the sessions in our next Droning On events. So that's something that we are talking about with the universities that we're going to. So stay tuned. And if there are any other questions, please put them in the chat. Happy to answer them. And if not, I'm not this very moment, then we will definitely get to them at the end. All right.
Thank you, Alina. All right, so next up we have Brian. Brian, Alina said you have jumped on. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can share yours. I think I have to make you a host. So let me do that. If I can find you.
If you want to go ahead and run the slides, that's fine too. It's whatever's easiest for you, Diana.
I don't, it's
I'm
not
happy to
that-
run them, Diana.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Alina? Alina?
I can run the slides.
Okay, we didn't have them in the deck. I think, Brian.
I
with
have
you-
them. He
Okay,
sent them.
that's why I asked him to send them to you. Okay, perfect. So we'll let Alina run the slides for you. Brian, thank you so much for being here. Good to see you again. As the slide said, he's the Chief of Strategic Plans and Programs in the Aviation Division at the Kansas Department of Transportation. KDOT, as well as Kansas State and others, partner with us on our Beyond and other partnerships, and he will share that with you. And so with that, Brian, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Thank you. It's good to be here, folks. Good afternoon. My name, like she said, my name is Brian Casson. I hope I don't bore you too much. I'm much better in person, but alas, we all deal with the technology when it's necessary. KDOT, if you'll advance the slide for me, Alina. Just as a bit of a background, we do operate as a division within the Kansas Department of Transportation. We cover both legacy aviation and new technologies to include all the gamut of UAS, of AAM, UAM, and small UAS, which is more of the emphasis of this. You can advance the slide for me. We started off as one of 9 actual lead participants in the integrated pilot program that began, and that morphed into the Beyond program. One dropped out. The purpose of it was really threefold: to go ahead and focus on infrastructure inspection, emergency response, and package delivery, to go ahead and try to promote UAS in the national airspace system. And to do that, it was to show the vitality and the utility that UAS holds for the public at large. You can go ahead and advance the slide. You can see we have a multitude of partners. You have to understand, most of the other LPs have taken a very flight-centric approach. They're very interested in flight operations, and specifically with an emphasis on package delivery. I think we've all seen in the news the option of people getting a pint of ice cream, a burrito delivered to their home. And while that is incredibly useful and fun, and maybe even at times a little bit gimmicky, it doesn't really encapsulate the real benefits that UAS have. We've taken a different approach. Ours is one of an ecosystem. Hence, we have so many partners that all cover a small section of what is necessary to make UAS work. It's not going to be a one or few entities that will cover the entirety of the environment. So everyone brings a little piece of the pie to it. And if it's all put together, it will function. So as you can see, we have people that are from you can go ahead and advance it, that cover the gamut. We have ones that don't even fly a drone. So for example, the Kansas Farm Bureau doesn't even fly drones in the least, but what they do is they have 20,000 farm and ranch families in the state of Kansas, which is an incredible reach. And that'll dovetail into what I'll talk about next, in that while they don't fly drones themselves, they can actually ameliorate the concerns of the public. And really what we believe to be the linchpin of success within UAS being integrated into legacy aviation and frankly into society in general is the notion of engagement. You can go ahead and advance the slide. These are the current operations as a smattering that you can see. Precision Agriculture, Kansas, obviously an agricultural state. It is a huge export of ours, and we feed the nation, and we're very proud of that. And so it's a very prominent part of the portfolio of operations that we have. Not to diminish inspections, we are the Department of Transportation, so we obviously use it to inspect the infrastructure that we have in Kansas, of which there are quite a bit in terms of linear and non-linear both. Go ahead and advance the slide. This discusses the operations that we have undertaken as a state. I really want to emphasize mostly on public safety. In Kansas, we've tried to go ahead and recognize that there are many use cases, obviously, for UAS and drones in general. However, in our state, it's been best to scope it in terms of public safety. In our state, we have a penchant for natural disasters. I think everyone's familiar with the Wizard of Oz, and there's a reason why that had a tornado in it. We are very prone to tornadoes. The Greensburg tornado being the impetus for many of the endeavors for public safety within our state, where it just leveled a particular town in Kansas. And to make sure that that event doesn't happen again, it was determined that we would go ahead and be proactive moving forward. So citizens in the state of Kansas are accustomed to these types of natural disasters, particularly in the terms of severe weather, which can also include flooding and wildfires. So scoping it in that respect is something that every citizen in the state and stakeholder within the state can definitely understand and relate to on a very personal level. So we have decided to use that as a means of leveraging the public at large to understand the benefits of UAS that exist and to be able to harness the opportunities that the technology has to go ahead and frankly make life better for all of us here in the state of Kansas. And in the same regard, we don't want to ignore other opportunities in the forms of infrastructure inspection or law enforcement presence and pilot training. You can go ahead and advance the slide for me. This is really the heart of the program when it comes to me personally. It's integral to understand the concerns of the citizens and the various stakeholders. I don't care if those stakeholders end up being businesses that feel that drones potentially would go ahead and take commerce away from them, or if it's a public, an individual in the public that is concerned about property rights and privacy concerns, of which are very, very important, needless to say. But the key is that you can have the best technology available. However, if it's really not embraced by the public at large and society, as far as not just from a legal standpoint or framework, but frankly, as an acceptance portion, it's really never going to go ahead and get traction. And that's where we have very much scoped and sculpted our program to be different in the sense that many feel that the technology is the, frankly, the gatekeeper, if you will, to go ahead and advance it into the NAS. However, our approach is a little bit different. We feel, frankly, that community involvement that will turn into acceptance, and I want to be clear, they're not the same. Engagement will facilitate acceptance, but just engaging the public doesn't guarantee or, frankly, even make it particularly likely that there will be acceptance. In order for the technology, no matter how grand and amazing it is, to frankly really be to gain traction and get reach within the sectors or even within society in general, it has to be accepted. And the key linchpin to that is community engagement. We, to that end, have also taken a different approach. Many have used surveys, usually using a university, sometimes calling. The point is that it tends to be a very one-sided engagement, and there's nothing wrong with that. The idea being that using that type of medium is anonymous. It gives people the ability to get their opinions heard, but at the same time not have to worry about owning it. It's actually very, very different here in Kansas. Frankly, what we have in Kansas is the opposite. People really aren't interested in anonymity. What they're interested in is engagement that is a true give and take. They own how they feel. even if that feeling is a little bit on the controversial side or negative side, that's fine. Our approach has been to try to ameliorate those concerns by engaging it and dealing with it and having a frank, honest discussion. I like to say that the most important part of the program for us to integrate UAS is to have voice. It all frankly just comes down to voice. And that voice can be in parallel with how I feel, it can be diametrically opposed. As long as you have voice, that could only benefit the program and the technology moving forward. Because if people feel that they're alienated or not represented adequately, it can be the best technology available that's ever happened, and it just really won't catch on. It has to be embraced by people feeling attachment to it and creating buy-in. And so to that end, we haven't really done, I mean, we have a survey, but it really hasn't been a central pillar of our program like it has been with others. Ours is actually incredibly technical. It involves having a frank discussion, one-on-one. We found that our stakeholders are overwhelmingly interested in having just a face-to-face discussion. Obviously, the pandemic made that difficult, but what we've tried to do is make sure we have opportunities to engage face-to-face. Someone so simply will ask a question. So anytime we are doing a function as a division, we bring up UAS and make sure that people have an opportunity, frankly, just to ask a question. And so I think you can tell I don't like reading slides, but I feel they're necessary. So I'll explain a little bit here on these because I desperately don't like when people read slides to me. So you can see how on here I list town hall meetings first. Again, they are not sophisticated, but they're incredibly impactful because it allows people to ask a question, get an answer back immediately. They don't have to wait for putting in a survey and then have someone contact them later. It's immediate. And then they often have a follow-up question. Many things in life show that when people are unfamiliar, they're uncomfortable, maybe even fearful. And that's fine. The point is that that has to be engaged and ameliorated. And maybe you won't change the opinion. I'm not trying to proselytize anyone. I just want to make sure everyone is represented and the multifarious nature of their perspectives are taken into account. So what we do is we do 5010 airport inspections for the airport master record. In Kansas, we have 140 public use airports. And to that end, every time we conduct one of these, we make it a point to have a frank and honest discussion with not only the airport sponsor, but the community in general that's in the area, because at times there can be a less than harmonious relationship between legacy aviation and UAS. And if that's the case, so be it. But we won't really have integration unless we embrace the opportunity to have the two coalesce at the same time. You'd be surprised how many small rural Kansas airport managers who will tell you, I am not a fan of those drones because they have been a pilot for decades and they like to fly their Cessna that was built in Wichita and they're very proud of it. But because it's new and unfamiliar, they weren't really forced to get out of their comfort zone. When I can go ahead and bring it and I can show them how I use it for an airport inspection to get a bird's eye view so much more readily than has been done in the past, it's a segue and they can see it maybe in a different light. But the point being is that it's an opportunity, and all of this is about opportunity. And so we try to realize economies at every juncture that we can. So when I go ahead and speak at a school, for example, I bring a small drone with me. We actually have a STEM program with USC 345, which I mentioned here. It's where they have a project-based learning science curriculum that involves space and flight and drones in particular. And so we've partnered with them to go ahead and bring the message of UAS and the benefits of it, because I have to admit, children especially are really keen on being able to see a drone fly. And something so simple as being at an elementary school and I can show how all the kickballs that are on the roof of the building, I can spot them in real time. They think it's just the most amazing thing in the world. And to watch the amount of wonder in their eyes that is contagious to their families, then is pretty incredible going forward. So, but back to my community engagement portion here, we use, as you see, multiple avenues, the Civil Air Patrol. We also have our other partners, the Kansas Farm Bureau, who I do many a webinar with. They send out surveys for me and a link to my Qualtrics survey that I have. So it's opportunity. You can go ahead and advance the slide. Thank you. As I was stating before, we actually have the public safety portion is something that people in our state can very much relate to on a very personal basis. And you can go ahead and advance the slide. What you saw there was a range fire that is going. And what happens is that for public safety, it's something that we can go ahead and scope appropriately so that people are able to understand the value of what UAS brings. So when they see images, as you see right here, go ahead and advance the slide. Perfect. And you can keep going. These are just pictures of a wildfire that existed. And so when we use, like I said, when we use public safety as the scoping mechanism, people are able to relate to it. Because while it is grand and really incredible to have the opportunity of getting food from a particular drone that goes ahead and drops it to you, or an order from Walmart via drone up, really when it comes down to it, that's not really going to, in our opinion, move the needle too terribly much into acceptance. If anything, there are certain segments of the Kansas stakeholders who are more than a little fearful at times of it, that maybe it would go ahead and put someone out of a job. The local pizza delivery person in a small town, we're dealing in some Kansas communities, the average size community in Kansas is about 2,500 people. You go ahead and have 5 people that are pizza delivery drivers, all of a sudden, potentially, if that job is taken away, that can have a burden on the community at large. So there's a reticence of the technology. So we focused more on just the obvious use case of public safety, and it dovetails well into engagement practices that we have. And to that end, one of our operational scenarios that we had is called a capabilities exercise, in which we took a small town in Kansas. You can advance the slide. A small town in Kansas called Rossville, which is to the west of Topeka, which is the capital city. We're in the northeast corner of the state of the rectangle. And what it effectively did was we demonstrated how using our approach of an ecosystem of partners, when put together, can actually amount to substantial impact on an all too common occurrence that occurs in Kansas, which in this example was we had a simulated mock-up of natural disaster in this small town of about 2,500, which again is a pretty median-sized town for our state. And we coalesced these people. Different parts knew what was going to happen, and ironically enough, not all of our leadership did. If you actually look in the upper right-hand corner picture, the woman with the mask on that's looking, that was the KDOT deputy secretary of the time. And we deliberately didn't explain to her the totality of what we were going to do, because we wanted her to have no preconceived notions as far as what she was getting into. We pretty much told her to show up, and we put it on. And the gist of it was it simulates a natural disaster. You can go ahead and advance the slide. This is showing some of our partners. What it did was we took the small town of Rossville, 2,500 people, and we simulated what would effectively happen if a big EF5 tornado descended on it in real time. All of a sudden, perfect, keep it right there. Communications go down. Roadways are no longer functional. The water treatment plant doesn't work. People don't have running water. Then this was a dynamic situation, however. It wasn't just, okay, we're going to have a mock-up and what do we do? No, it was dynamic, just like it would be in real time. So in the bottom picture there, you see my boss, Director of Division of Aviation Director Bob Brock, speaking about what was transpiring. And then in the upper picture with the LiDAR next to it is a bridge. So we would have emergency responders out in the county coming into where there was supposedly a mass casualty event. However, while they were getting close to a bridge going over the Kansas River, in real time, we would pull the bridge out of commission as if the bridge had collapsed. So that dynamic component was integral to the first responders being able to, frankly, practice the way they have to play in a real scenario. All the while, we had UAS flying over, giving a common operating picture of what was happening so that reconnaissance and information were streaming in. Advance the slide, please. This is just to show you where it is relative to Topeka, because of course people wouldn't really know oftentimes of the town. Perfect. This is just to give you a bit of perspective as far as the issue Kansas has had with tornadoes. The most recent one being in 2007 when Greensburg was frankly utterly destroyed. It was such a cataclysmic event in our state that it forced the Adjutant General's office to go ahead and take proactive measures to train first responders so that they wouldn't be unprepared for such a scene. And they created a place called Crisis City, south and west of Salina, Kansas, where they literally have a rubble pile. They can flip a train over to simulate a derailment. They have a pipeline. So it will actually, they can simulate the bursting of a pipeline so they can, again, practice the way they have to play. And it allows them to come from all reaches of the state, not just ones in the more populous population centers of the state. It allows those in Northwest and Southwest Kansas that are incredibly sparsely populated and rural, and often volunteers and not professional first responders, where that's their full-time job. These are people that are just regular folks in their community that want to help each other out and have a thought of making their community a better place through mutual assistance. This way they can train too. And so if there is a disaster, they're not caught in this predicament of, oh, I've never seen something like this before. It allows them to get a leg up, and in the same regard, see how a tool like UAS, we're talking places that never could afford a $500,000 helicopter. But you know what? They can afford a $5,000 drone and two people to get licensed with a Part 107 certification and be able to fly it well. That is a game changer. And I know that term is thrown around a lot. I'm guilty of it too, but it really is. And it's beautiful to be able to see someone in Ellsworth County. I know their sheriff, he actually got his 107 certificate with me as just happenstance. And he has a small jurisdiction. And consequently, it has changed how he's able to conduct law enforcement and emergency response in his county, because before they never had an aerial perspective. It was always on the ground. He can cover so much more ground and get so much more done, and frankly, keep people a heck of a lot safer. You can advance the slide. You can advance the slide as just further scoping to see where it's at. I wanted to show that it was the totality of the town. It wasn't just a portion of it. This was what we were doing. You can keep going. Yeah, it was just to show how we had dynamic situations. Power lines would go down. At the same time, there would be a structure fire that was theoretically created from that. And then a bridge would go out while they were responding to the structure fire. In a real disaster response scenario, it is dynamic. It's ever changing and unpredictable. That was the purpose of this, to make sure that the requisite pieces were disparate and not able to, frankly, know the end of the story as it was unfolding. I like to tease my children about reading the end of a couple pages of a book is really cheating. And that's how a lot of these mock-ups are. They really kind of are cheating in the sense that they know how it's going to go. It's very chronological. The purpose of this was to make it be like a very genuine and sadly scary emergency response scenario due to a tornado in Kansas. And it was very educational just for that reason alone. Keep going. These are more pictures to demonstrate on the monitors the dynamic nature of it, how things would change when we would go ahead and have the gymnasium of the local high school be the evac point. So people would go there as the safe zone, then all of a sudden the roof collapsed. That's something you would have to deal with in real life. And that's not something that is generally utilized when it comes to training purposes. And again, UAS gives you the entire picture all in one place. So you can allocate your resources to the best and most needed part of the situation because it is dynamic and fluid. You can advance the slide. And again, I feel like I have to put a lot of photos because if you weren't there, it's hard to conceptualize it. So I try to give as many pictures that elucidate the ever-changing nature of it. You can keep going. Those were just to show how we would take a road out of commission very arbitrarily, and then KDOT engineers had to decide a river does snake through that area. There are only a few bridges. How are the first responders going to get across? It's very much like the pioneers traveling across our country, were had to contend with lack of infrastructure. And in these types of disaster response scenarios, oftentimes the infrastructure that we come to depend on and take for granted in some regards just has to be taken out because it is no longer safe to be used. And it can take weeks to make sure that bridges are safe. You can advance the slide. This is to further show how it was dynamic and to also show the totality of the partners. We had Firstnet, which is a dedicated comms that the federal government has set up under the Department of Commerce to make sure that it was done as a reaction to 9/11 when people were not able to utilize cell phones because the towers were and the circuits were jammed up. This creates a preemption for availability so first responders can always have cell communication, which is incredibly important in situations like this. It's doubly important in Kansas where we don't have in certain parts of the state the level of broadband and comms infrastructure that they do in more densely populated centers. I mean, there are parts of Kansas that literally use DSL copper-fed internet, and even some that have to use really legacy dial-up type service. So, you know, I think we've all had cell phone calls dropped. Well, that's an inconvenience when that happens to us in regular discourse. It's life or death, literally, in a disaster response, particularly of a EF5 tornado type scenario, where the tornado is bad enough, but the fire that it spawns, the fact that it knocks over the local water tower and creates a flood, it creates levels of magnitude that just get worse and worse. Go ahead and advance it. And we wanted to be able to show the mobile nature of it. And here we are showing UAS to where we had multiple drones again flying. And what it was doing is all these feeds were coming in, of course, using the FirstNet system and Verizon as partners. That was being fed in real time to our ops center so that the commanders on the scene could dictate what assets needed to go to what place to garner the most benefit, and at the same time make sure that there was the, I know it's theoretical, but the least loss of property and the overall best safety of the public at large. You know, advance the slide. And this is further showing part of it. You see in the background in the upper right-hand corner, the mobile array that was brought in. And these are the types of assets that exist, particularly with the FirstNet system. They have these to where they will bring them out to a site. And you see underneath it, the red Verizon truck, which were similar, to where these will go ahead and allow the UAS to pull the data in real time. There's not latency with this to where you have to wait a certain amount of time and then crunch the data as a post-processing. No, that's really a marginal benefit in a fluid natural disaster situation to where you're trying to do time is of the essence. And so this was to show the dynamic nature of it and the benefit of being able to get things in real time. You can advance the slide. And this is also showing some of our KDOT operators who are our RPICs, which are remote pilots in command, and they're flying the UAS so that we could get situational awareness over the entirety of the situation there in Rossville for the KPEX. You can advance it. This is a smattering of the various bits of telemetry that we were pulling off in real time. So you can see that it wasn't just a matter of a drone that is just getting one item and it's existing in a vacuum. It is the totality of information coming in, and it allows the leadership on scene to make the best decisions with the most available information rather than playing a guessing game of what would be best, and then oftentimes realizing after the fact that while they did the best they could, it was a suboptimal decision. You can advance the slide. Now I would like to open it up to questions. I try really hard not to get too heavy into the science portion of it, because honestly, I feel that's really the least important. The most important is people. It's not fancy or sophisticated, but honestly, it's the most real because this all comes down to people. I don't care if it's a matter of them wanting to get a burrito from a drone, to get a prescription medicine because they live in a very rural part of the state and maybe their transportation is an impediment for them, and so that they could get a delivery of their heart medicine to them or a cancer treatment, or if it's a matter of being able to recognize that a drone would be useful for their local law enforcement officer to go ahead and find a child who was, wandered away from his or her parent, and the community is trying to find them. It beats having individuals shoulder to shoulder to shoulder trying to find that child in a wooded area when you can fly a drone over the top with a thermal camera and you can just see, boom, that's where the child is. I don't need to tell you that would make that family pretty happy to be able to know that their loved one was safe that quickly. It's effectively low-hanging fruit when it comes down to it, and it's addressing a need. Oftentimes, we are held in situations to where it's a solution looking for a problem. But this isn't that way. It's something that can benefit all parties involved. And even if they don't recognize that it would be a benefit, it's useful to go ahead and at least engage so that that perspective of indifference could even go ahead. What streaming hardware technology via the cellular network? That was actually Firstnet's dedicated material, and it's their owned property that they have. And actually, if you look up with Firstnet, they list their various pieces of equipment and assets that they have. And that was their mobile comm center. There's different bandwidths that they have, but usually you'll see, it's to connect to the drone. So what we had on that is, I don't know if you saw, but in the next to last slide, there was the communications array of the stand-up tower. It would actually beam back to that. And what would end up happening is we would put it to that, and then it would coalesce either with the Verizon system, or it would, yes, thank you. Or it would go ahead and go to the Firstnet. The two existed in parallel, and both wanted to be there. In reality, a situation that was genuine of that size, you would only really need one. You wouldn't necessarily need both, but it was an opportunity to show both systems existing in parallel. These are ones that, not to my understanding, are pretty exclusive to both of those providers, but the federal government funds the FirstNet system, and that's where those came from. And again, it was in relation to 9/11. They wanted to make sure that there was capability. They're in Colorado, if memory serves, is where the FirstNet truck you saw in there was. And they will bring it out for demonstrations like this, or to your locality if you genuinely have a need for it, for a communications array. All right, let me look here at chat. Whoa, pounding in here. I mean, let me see.
Yes, and don't hesitate to, turn your camera on, your mic on, and ask Brian while we've got him here. Brian, wonderful presentation. You said a lot of things that we say, and I love your final comment, which is it's about the people.
It
100%.
is, and I want to be really clear. I am admittedly biased in favor of drones, and as much as I don't want to proselytize the public, I feel I wouldn't be honest if I didn't, to some extent, try to move the needle in favor of drones because I genuinely believe in them.
Yeah.
I do feel that they are a capability that nothing else can duplicate. No one else at that price point can impact to the extent a drone can their community from a public service perspective. They just can't. I've seen it with many sheriff departments in the state of Kansas to where they would never be able to have an aerial presence, to have an eye in the sky for safety any other way. It's like that in Topeka where we live here, the capital city. The local police department actually crashed both of their, well, one went down, the other crashed, helicopters. So the highway patrol has a helicopter. And until drones, they were pretty much an entire dearth of aerial perspective. I don't need to tell you that's a big situational loss when it comes to dynamic scenes for the Leo community. So I'm admittedly biased about that.
Absolutely.
So,
I was just having a conversation earlier today about accessibility and the accessibility of drones. Great conversation. And it really drove home the point that, this new relatively to the general public technology is just so much more accessible, so much more equitable even to society in general. Everything that you said, Brian, Diana and I were like, wow, it sounds like it's us talking. So we're with you. Any support, of course, you need, that. We're here. So
no, I appreciate that. I wanted to address what Charles Werner noted earlier in the chat, saying about drones are great for disabled veterans and people.
yes,
And that dovetails into your equity notion that you were speaking to just a moment ago. And I could not agree more. I think it's a very, unfortunately, a very overlooked benefit that drones have. There's a gentleman that I have had this discussion with who has cerebral palsy, and mobility is a profound, he's a veteran too. And it happens to be that he is someone who mobility is a huge impediment for him. And something so simple as his family's property is many acres. He's not able to see it. It was cost prohibitive to go ahead and put cameras on it. He was having problems with vandalism because unfortunately some people knew he had mobility issues. The sheriff couldn't get out there very quickly. Well, went ahead and he got a drone with a camera on it. And he uses it as an augmentation for his Ring doorbell camera so that he can go ahead and actually have situational awareness of his property. It's a slight thing seemingly, but it's a capability he didn't have for years. And until that technology was around, it was something he figured he would never have. And so you're exactly right, Charles. It's great for people with mobility issues. And I feel veterans, it's particularly suited because they often have experience with them from their time in service.
Absolutely. And more to the point with veterans as well, there is being research done about how flying drones actually helps with PTSD and other mental health illnesses. So, this technology has so much potential in so many ways. And thank you, Brian, for everything that you and KDOT are doing to really advance this.
There was
Other questions? Oh,
yeah, there
yeah,
was
Diana.
another comment question in the chat asking, Brian said that you had mentioned, supporting DOE, and are you do you have like educational frameworks and operation?
We do. So I noted in there about USD 345. So we do have a STEM initiative with them. One of our partners in the Beyond program, Kansas State University, who Alina mentioned, attended the Droning On event in Omaha. They actually have a lot of that armed for us as well. They have a STEM initiative which was effectively teaching the teachers, so that they went ahead and they for their STEM program, they taught the teachers the STEM program, who then could use that and proliferate out and get a force multiplier effect. Because it's, especially in rural communities, incredibly difficult for them to get that kind of training, and it doesn't really equate too terribly well. I know the FAA has allowed recurrent exams and the like, and VO training to be online and virtual. However, from our experience, when it comes to really getting the totality of flight training, you really need to have it be a hands-on event. And so it was determined to get this out into rural communities of Kansas, where access, again, equity and access, become a very limiting factor. They came and had a series of trainings at Kansas State University's aviation and aeronautics campus in Salina, Kansas. They taught the teachers, who then went out to their local communities and spread it on their level to try to get a force multiplier effect. So they really handle that portion of it. And what our STEM is to go ahead and deal in more of a micro environment of trying to benefit the existing, like Project Lead the Way or others that have a science-based initiative that involve aeronautics, and use it as a on-hands demonstration, particularly with an M210 or a larger drone. This way they can see what they're capable of. And again, it's one thing to know about drones and see a photo like the one behind Alina, but it's a whole other thing when you hear the thing buzzing and you can actually see it looking at what you deal with every day, like on the top of a gymnasium, for example. Okay, what else we got? Sorry, I'm trying to read them all here.
Yeah, there was another one that came in from Michael. Hey, Michael.
Hey, how are you? I can read that off to you. We utilized an M300 and the Firstnet network down in Tampa when they had the potential levee break issue with some less than healthy water behind it. And we were around the clock with the M300 streaming that. We had a great deal of difficulty streaming over the Firstnet network due to connectivity issues. Have you utilized Starlink, or have you done anything with Magenta First as well? Because we're looking at multiple options, and utilizing a cradle point device possibly to truncate all four of the options so we can get the best of the world. What is your thoughts?
We didn't need to. My question would be, what was the ground pop density of the area you were operating in?
It's a metro area.
See, and my belief would be, all right, first to answer your question, no, we didn't. What in that scenario for our CAPEX, it was sufficient for what we needed. And we were trying to, again, encapsulate the median-sized community that we deal with in our state, which is, I guarantee, smaller than what you're dealing with. Of 2,500 people in a rural environment, that is the type of area that would have fewest access to resources, and at the same time is the most common type scenario that we have in our state. So I believe what you're saying would be amenable if we had done this in the greater Kansas City Metroplex, for example. I believe that's what we would have had to have done. But again, it was a matter of using the appropriately sized assets for what we were doing to demonstrate. And again, this was a scenario meant to mimic what would happen and frankly overwhelm the median-sized community in the state of Kansas.
Okay. Yeah, I support a 913 phone number, so I'm familiar with the area.
Well, you definitely know, especially say 913, yeah. Wyandotte, yeah. Used to be here.
Johnson County.
Yep, I was gonna say, yeah. Wyandotte Johnson.
Do we have any other questions for Brian? one came through. What drone do you use for winter conditions?
Winter definitely brings up some potential problems, and that's why we were focusing, like in this example, more along the lines of summertime disasters, which would be tornado, flood, fire, because yes, you're going to, especially with non-DoD level small UAS, you're going to have the weather impediment. There's no question about it. And however, in Kansas, and again, we're scoping it for our state, blizzards really aren't a problem here. We do get snow, but it's nothing like what you would get in Minnesota or Michigan, especially the Upers in Michigan. We don't get that here, so that was a little bit outside the scope of it. I think in order to go ahead and ameliorate those types of concerns, you would have to probably go away from a quad octocopter, and you would be going more towards something along the lines of a Great Shark, and you're talking a fixed wing platform that would be running some kind of more traditional fuel, a liquefied type fuel that has more energy density. And now you're talking a different price point too, that would also be next tier up for your emergency responders to be able to afford. And you're talking again, platforms that are more repurposed DoD type technology. And then you're getting a lot closer to legacy aviation of a regular helo. And so that's why that was a little bit outside the scope, frankly, for this. And we're blessed in Kansas, we don't have terrible winters.
All right, and Alina, I see you responded to Rob. Thank you for that. That is definitely something that we're trying to completely figure out. One day we'll get there. All right, I'm going to share my last couple pictures here to say if, and I know early in the presentation we were sharing about events and things going on and STEM activities, and there is a group of drone pros. Some of you are drone pros because we know you, and that is, you know, those drone experts who volunteer to the FAA to help us with this education so that we will be able to integrate drones for different types of delivery, right? So all of us working together, it will definitely happen. We try to keep it updated. The map, there's a map that's located on the FAAsafety.gov site, and just click on hot topics and it kind of scrolls through. And then last, these are the dates. Because of the change in Great Lakes, we may actually go back a week and maybe have the next meeting on October the 4th or 5th, and then again in December. And we're already lining up people, and I'll make sure that we get an agenda out ahead of time too, so that whatever the topics are, hopefully you'll always join us. I think we all learn from each other. And again, Alina, Brian, thank you so much for telling us about the happenings going on within the FAA as well as within Kansas DOT. We have a lot in the audience that definitely benefited from this, most in the audience, I should say. And any final questions or comments, activities maybe coming up you want to share?